Cool. So let's go on and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us for Trap Talks. My name is Corey Stay Trapping. I'm the host of this podcast, and today I got a good friend. I've known him. How long we known each other? About 15 years, probably maybe longer.
Has it been that long, man? I'm getting old, bro. I'm getting
15
old.
Yeah. So yeah, we have today with us Bryan Young. He's going to become one of the latest Black unicorns. Coming out of the U.S. I'm gonna go in and speak that into the existence.
Speaking from your mouth to God's ears, bro. From your mouth to God's ears.
Exactly. So he's the founder of co-founder of Home Lending Pal. They just raised some money. I want to say $2 million or something like that.
Yeah, another 2.2, and we're up to 3.5 million total pre-revenue. So that's good.
Right. So we don't delve into that, because when you raise money for a company, it doesn't necessarily mean the money's going in your pocket, So we're gonna definitely unpack that. But yeah, so definitely honored to have you up here, man. And yeah, so let's go into it. So you're a military kid, right?
Yes. My mom was in the Air Force and my stepdad was in the Army. So, we travel all over the world, but I only really remember being in Okinawa, Japan from about middle school to my 9th grade year of high school.
Wow. So what's the major differences between, like, I guess, Japanese culture from what you experienced to when you came back to the US?
Americans are lazy compared to the Japanese, honestly. The Japanese, they work 6 days out of the week, no complaints. They pretty much walk everywhere. They eat healthier. The food portions are much smaller over there. But I think really it was just the work ethic is really kind of what stuck with me and still sticks with me to this day. Seeing how hard they go. And most of their people live longer than Americans because of their diets, you know what I mean? So that was a big thing, is really trying to understand that culture. But then, as a military brat, if you let yourself, if you allow it to happen, you're around a bunch of different kids that are from different backgrounds, white, Black, Asian, and I think one of the biggest things my mom instilled in me was the ability or the necessity to meet people that were from different backgrounds than what you were from, to understand kind of, their struggles and pains. Because, as Black people, we struggle a lot, but there's also other struggles that other people go through as well, too.
Right. The one thing I hear a lot about Japan too, that's so clean.
It is very clean, man. They are very they are neat freaks, to say the least, which is good. You go into someone's house, you take off your shoes. They're very much a catering culture when you're visiting, which is a lot different from America, but it's a very good place to be, and hopefully I'll be able to take my younger brother back sometime next year.
Yeah, that's cool. So when you came back to the US, you said you came back when you was in high school, and you was in Fayetteville, right? Was it Fayetteville, Fort Bragg?
We went to DC, or right outside of DC, in Maryland first, Waldorf, Maryland. My mom was stationed at Bowling Air Force Base, and then she got moved to the Pentagon. But my grandmother got really sick, and honestly, the only reason I probably graduated, or I want to say graduated, moved from the 10th to the 11th grade, is because I had probably like a 3.8 GPA, but I missed a bunch of days from school between sports and everything else. So, the school board had to get involved, and eventually I moved back to Fayetteville, where I'm originally from, or at least where I say I'm from.
Got it. So, yeah, man. So let's actually go into, I think that's a really good context for, your background. You already have that international experience, right? And talking to different, people from different cultures. Yeah. Maybe I couldn't choose some better words. Did I say account? I meant international experience.
No, you said international experience. I was just, saying international young, because, it sounds cool.
Well, we're young, Jay-Z, huh? But yeah, so when you was in high school, I remember you told me you started a trucking company, right?
Yeah. I technically started my first company in Japan. It was a lawn care company that I was able to do, government contracts and, eventually, get some of my friends to help work. And when I came back to the States, you know, I really wanted to go work at Foot Locker or Finish Line or somewhere, but, I wasn't cool enough or cute enough, I guess. And so I had this idea of doing ice cream. One of the guys my mom worked with up in DC, he had an ice cream store. And I don't know if people remember, but when Cold Stone originally started, they would do jingles when you first walked in. They would sing to you and stuff. And it's like, hey, that was my idea. So I knew we couldn't compete with that. So my uncle was a truck driver, so eventually, I just got into the trucking industry with him. And then the guy that my mom was dating at the time after she got divorced was also a freight broker. So I was able to get involved with the trucking industry for a couple of years, and we did really well there for a while.
Got it. So, with the trucking, what did you like about it? What did you learn? I think that was like the first successful business that you actually had, right?
Well, the lawn care company did really well.
Lawn care. Yeah.
That did well. But yeah, the trucking business was really the first, I would say, big company I had. That we did about $5 million in annual revenue. So it was really the first big company I had. What did I like about it? I don't know. I mean, I think it was the opportunity to be an entrepreneur, to kind of control your own path. And, I think just my personality was one that, even though I was doing it with family, I kind of just wanted to be big. But, the thing about transportation is that, it's 24 hours nonstop. If those drivers are on the road, you have to be available. I think that was really what was wearing me down. And I was fortunate that when I got to college, I met a guy, Bobby Pham, and he introduced me to the world of digital marketing. And, I had dipped and dabbled a little bit, with the trucking company. I wanted to do more technology focused stuff. I realized that when you look at the Forbes list, most of the guys on there are either in finance, real estate, or technology. And, real estate, I didn't have enough, liquid assets to be, big into there. Finance, I'm smart, but I didn't think I was good enough with numbers to go into finance. So technology was really the only other option I had if I wanted to try to be on the Forbes list. So that's how I got into tech, honestly. That was my logic. I mean, I wish it was more complicated, but that was it.
No, I mean, I think I told you this before. Like how I got into sales was out of anger. Like when I was a kid, I used to burn CDs, and then I gave one of my cousins, I used to give him so many CDs. And then one day we went to school. I was in middle school. He's like, hey, yeah, man, I'll give you this CD, my little cousin, to make me as many as I want. I said, what? And I started trying from that standpoint, so.
Greatness comes out of necessity most times. I think most people think that, you have this great idea all the time, but sometimes, the best ideas come out of necessity.
Right. So where do you actually get your best ideas from? What is your process for coming up with ideas?
Oh, you don't want to know that. Sometimes it's from just listening to people talk. Sometimes, I have to get in the creative space. So, sometimes it's from just random places. Like I wish there was just one point or one moment that I could point to and say, this is when I'm most creative. But I think it's, those random nights where you're out late nights with a bunch of friends or whatever that just spur good ideas. But, I don't have really one, like I don't go into a room and say, okay, I'm just going to sit in the room and, let, soft music play in the background while the lights are low. And this is going to give me my best idea. Like, it's usually a random.
I actually thought you was like that, honestly.
Not like that. I used to be, man, back in the day. No, it's just, random conversations like this, with friends that are smart. And I think, people will, if you're willing to listen, I think so many people get in the habit of wanting to force their ideas on other people. But I think if you put your idea out there and then you let people give you constructive criticism back, or even just feed into that, you'll find something that's beneficial. And I think it's just being able to decipher, hey, that makes sense, I'm gonna run with that, versus, this is how it has to be done. So that's the be coachable. If there's one in that long rant, if there's one thing, it's be coachable and be willing to pivot if needed to make your idea better.
Yeah, I think that's like the two hallmarks of like being an entrepreneur, right? It's like being coachable and knowing when to pivot versus using the buzzword, right?
It's hard. I mean, people, I think, a company in many ways is like a child, and when it's your baby, you want it to be how you want it to be, and everyone wants to be successful. But I think
Right.
people that do the best, they usually start with a good idea, but it's all in the execution as well. And I think you have to be willing to change, to modify on the fly. A lot of you hear the saying, you're basically flying the plane while you're building it, and that couldn't be
Right.
more than the truth when it comes to
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. So.
Yeah. Well, you better get used to that. So I mean, you about to make this other unicorn. So you gonna be flying that jumbo jet trying to fix the engine at the same time.
I'm already doing it, brother. So hopefully the plane gets bigger. I think that's the only difference. Is the plane gets a little bit bigger as you go, but
Right.
it is definitely a knack that you get after you do it for a while. You learn, when you should do stuff and how you should do stuff. So.
Right. Right. So yeah, let's go back to that. So you met Bobby family. I ain't seen Bobby in a minute.
He leads
He's still in North Carolina?
Now he's in Vietnam, but Bobby still leads our marketing efforts. I went back. So the cool thing about this company is that a lot of the people, the very talented people that I've met over the years, that I felt were highly qualified but overlooked, the underdogs, basically. A lot of them work for my company now, either as a full-time employee or as a contractor. And that's just really because I trust them. I know they're motivated, and I know that they're good at what they do, given an opportunity. So if I'm gonna go make some millionaires, I'd rather it be people that have rode with me for the last 10, 15 years, you know what I mean? So
Right. Right. So Bobby taught you, say that again.
I said, if you want to come do sales, let me know. Always recruiting, always be recruiting. That's what my my investors say. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We always gonna talk. But I do work for a company. So
right.
Hopefully,
you got the big money now. I probably can't afford you. I can't afford you anymore. You got the
big money. So yeah, when you made the transition out of trucking and then into digital marketing or whatever, I know you said like with trucking, you got to be up all day. And were you driving the trucks?
No, I love cars, but I can't drive 18-wheelers. So I wasn't good at that at all. It's the shifting just doesn't work for me for some reason.
Yeah.
But funny thing, one of my first sports cars was a stick shift because of that. But anyway, I looked at really Bobby Pham talk. He talked about how good I was, but when you talk about kind of the internet, that's really one of the places where your money can almost in a sense work for you. And you can get really good at something. Like the thing about people, people want to make a lot of money, and you can do that. I mean, in whatever you choose, but the only way that you can do that is by becoming really good at a craft where if you start out and it takes you 40 hours to do something, you really want to get to the point where you become so good at it that it takes you 5, 10, 10 hours to do this, to do that task. And I think that's really what Bobby told me about. And that's where I just was able to pick up stuff quickly, and stuff that, I originally started out, taking forever to get done. Now it's just like I can see stuff, and I just have a unique ability to be able to quickly identify and then create a solution for a problem. And that's really what, made, I guess, my internet-based career. I'm technically a digital strategist, or I lead digital transformation strategies for companies, and so also known as conversion rate optimization. So that's really what made me good at my job, is that ability to not put myself in a silo, to learn new products, new platforms. Because if you fail to innovate, you die. Whether you work for someone else or you work for yourself. And so I just utilized what I worked for someone else until I was able to do it again for myself here.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and that's when I joined you, when you had launched, you and Brandon and I forgot the other name, your other co-founder at the time, started
Matt.
That's when I joined you guys. Yeah,
young crazy college kids that were making way too much money. I think it was in our sophomore year, my sophomore year, going into my sophomore year. I think that semester we made probably 6 figures in a couple months. And
I would have dropped out, bro.
I did. But it took me about a year, but I did. I did go back and get my degree. Most people think I graduated. I actually dropped out at the end of my junior year, and then I had made a promise to my mom to get my degree. So when I went corporate, and moved to Miami. I spent that first year fulfilling that promise to my mom, which was really important to me at the time. And so, but yeah, that I didn't stay long.
Yeah. So when we met, I don't know how long you had started BEC, but we were at a lunch and learn with a venture capitalist in North Carolina in Raleigh. And I remember I saw you there, and I'm like used to being like the only Black guy around in the tech scenes. So it was like being I forgot what's the like being like a Black albino, because it wasn't that many of us, and I was usually the youngest. And then when I saw you, I'm like, okay, this is dope, another brother, and they just me in the room, and then we just like hit it off. So
Yeah, I remember that. I came to give a speech at UNC, and you were part of their group as one of the leaders there. And it was just like you said, like I wasn't expecting no Black people to be at UNC, honestly. And when I got there, I was like, oh, there's another person.
I didn't know there was Black people at Duke, and then when I moved to the Bay, most of the Black people I knew from North Carolina went to Duke. It was more than UNC, so.
Right. No. It was good. So no, everything happens for a reason.
Right. So yeah, talking about the digital work you did, you actually did the mobile strategy for Obama in the Democratic Convention in 2010. What year was it? 2010?
2012.
2012. Yeah. So how was that? How did you secure that win, and like how was it? What did you learn from it?
Charge more money. No, I think at that time we were these young kids, and I was a minority founder, and for us it became known as data-driven marketing. But for us, it was a way for us to justify people giving us large sums of money to build campaigns for them. And most people don't know that we beat out 2 incumbent shops when we won that contract. But a lot of our strategy was based around numbers, data. And I've always kind of been that way in the digital spaces, spend $1, try to make $5 back. And I just happened to be really good at doing that. And I think when we went into that pitch, we had some good creative ideas, but it was more about finding that silver lining in the data. And in that particular campaign, what we ended up doing is we found that in the analytics, a lot of the Hispanic market, nowadays we talk about some apps and cell phones like it's, commonplace, but back then in 2012, it wasn't. But we found that a lot of people were viewing their stuff from their mobile phones or their iPads. They didn't actually have computers. And what we actually ended up building an experience that was specifically tailored to them in Spanish, and that was kind of the turning point in that campaign.
Dope. Yeah, like when I was there, that's when I really like, wow, this mobile marketing is really going to take off. That's like working with y'all. Like I was like, wow, I kind of knew it, but I didn't really know it. Like looking at the numbers, and I was like, wow, this is like the new wave.
Yeah, I think there's for anyone that's looking to get into the digital space, I definitely think that you could go to school for it now. Back when I started, you couldn't, but there's a lot of certifications that you can take to learn how to do your job great or to do your job really well. And when I was in college, I talked about dropping out, but I didn't drop out because I wasn't educated. I dropped out because the learning that I needed to do was more so in the certification, and I was learning there instead of going to class, learning about stuff that really wasn't relevant to what I was trying to do. So
yeah,
stay in school, kids.
I mean, you was chasing the six figure bag, and
it
was college or in debt, or get in debt. So
I realized that at a young age that people respect the consultant more than they respect the employee. But to be a consultant, you have to go.
Why is that?
Who knows? I think with consultants, it's this outside third party source that is expected to be an expert. And when you're an employee, I think it's just the typical hierarchy that gets so many people buried, where you have great ideas, but because you're not an executive team leader, or you may not be under good management, that prevents those ideas from shining. Whereas with a consultant, it's like, we're paying you to be here. You're the expert. You're supposed to tell us how to do this. And I think that's really what makes people respect the idea of consultants more. But
yeah.
Yeah, who knows why?
I don't know, because I remember Brandon. I think it was Brandon who told me this. He said people like consultants because so they can have someone to blame on if things
That
go
too.
wrong.
That too. You think so. Typically, in companies, older people are the ones that are running stuff, and the young, fresh ideas are usually the interns or entry level positions, and so you're seen as different. When you're entry level, it's like, oh, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. It's a good idea, they're eager, but stay in your place. Whereas as
Right,
a consultant, it's like, all right, well, we can try this because it's new, but again, you have someone to blame if it doesn't work. Uh,
right.
so sometimes it's just and as a consultant, sometimes it's just helping those voices be heard a lot better. So it changes from situation to situation.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you deal with being a consultant and then working with the employees or the workers of that particular company? Like, what are some how do you like win employees over and stuff like that to get behind the plan that you're creating?
Charisma. History. I think everyone's afraid of change, and as a consultant, your first job. And I talk about me being a digital transformation expert more than I'm a conversion rate optimization expert. And the first thing I learned with digital transformation is that you have to make people feel like their job isn't in jeopardy, and sometimes it is, but you can't make them feel like that from day one. Um, you have to really look at quickly identify what is someone's strengths and weaknesses, and then put them in positions where they can succeed. And I think that's really how you win people over as consultants. You try to be friendly. You try to ensure that they're excelling, and more importantly, that you're not the one that's getting all of the recognition. It's good that you want some recognition, but it's better if your team is getting recognized for the work and stuff like that. So people, they like that. It makes them feel comfortable. So for me, I think as long as I got paid as a consultant, I didn't really care about uh, being recognized. But as an employee, that's really important. That's really what helps them keep their job. And so you want to make sure that you're allowing them to shine while you shine too. You don't want to steal all the spotlight. 48 laws of power, if you will.
Right, right. Never outshine the master. Yeah.
Never outshine the master. So
Right, right. So obviously Obama won. But what were, I guess, like the major breakthroughs of that campaign? Because then eventually, right, other people started following what you were doing and stuff like that. So what were like some major things that happened that were, I guess, the metrics or whatever, aside from Obama winning the election again?
So I think Ad Age did. I think it was Ad Age that did a write up, and they called it the most interactive political campaign at the time ever. And I had a chance to go on the speaking
And Ad
circuit.
Age is like one of the top advertising.
Yeah, like they're one of the top advertising publications in the industry at that time. At least they were. I don't know about now, but they if Ad Age stamped you, you're pretty good now.
Yeah.
And for us, I think it was the fact that we went to mobile, that we weren't afraid to try something different with mobile apps. But then also we adapted to our user base. And, you see so many campaigns, even now today, where, this is a good idea. I'm going to force the borrower to do it, or force the user, the consumer, to do it this way.
Yeah.
I think there's something special about getting consumers involved early and then adopting to them. You know, um, Even with home lending power, most people don't realize that we started last year around, I would say, May, June, when we launched our private beta. And it's been ugly. It's been unfortunate, but it's an investor that told us if we can get 100 users, um, they would be willing to invest $250,000. We ended up getting 1,200 users within that time period that he gave us, and they did not invest. But instead of, again, we talk about building the plane while you're flying. Instead of panicking, we took a negative and turned it into a positive by saying, okay, well, we're here now. How about you guys continue to help us? And they actually, the consumers volunteered to help us with that.
Yeah.
When we did a feedback session with Alpha Labs, and they just kept the feedback coming. So now you see that we're in a place now where we're a little bit closer to, I would say, being fully commercial ready, but we still allow our users to utilize the product before it's completely finished, so that they can weigh in, good or bad, whether they think it's functional. And sometimes, that's a very slippery slope. You know, sometimes people log in and it doesn't work at all. But
Yeah.
you know, when it does work, you know, there's people, and I think you logged in at one point and it didn't work. People do log in and it works. You know, it's a good experience because they're able to say, hey, I like this or I didn't like this, and here's where I think you should, you know, make some changes. And unfortunately, that sucks. You know, but at the same time, you need those. You need the good with the bad. If you're only hearing the good, then eventually the bad can potentially sneak up on you. So
Right.
you know, there's nothing wrong with launching it. If you're waiting until a product is perfect, you probably waited too long, you know, in that sense. And that is actually a very true statement.
Yeah, and a product is never really perfect, you know, because it has to evolve with times, you know. So
Especially not software. There's always going to be bugs. There's always going to be something to fix, something to add on.
right.
But again, you know, you have to build it for your users. And there's nothing else. Our users help us understand where to prioritize. Sorry, our users understand where to prioritize our needs more than us, you know, because there may be features that you want to utilize that necessarily aren't valuable to the people that are utilizing your product. So.
Right. Now, I got to ask you, that VC was like, hey, I want you to get 200 signups, or was it 100 and you ended up getting 1,200?
It was 100, unfortunately, but you know.
Yeah. So why did they say no, even though you crushed their mark and you weren't even doing any type of marketing at that time, right?
No. They came back and said that user base was too small. But really, as a minority founder, the game is different for us. You know, the bar is often moved, and we're often told to. The bar is often moved for us, and you're often told to do one thing, and then you hit that milestone, that mark, and then it's like, oh, we'll go do another milestone, another mark before we get you your investment. And that's really what happened. But I mean, it sucks at the time, you know, for any entrepreneur out there that's trying to raise funds. You know, you're not the only one. You know, minorities get less than 3% of the total funds altogether. Yeah. I think, you know, last year it's like 147 billion that went into investment, and minorities got less than 2% of that. So, you know, it sucks, but you know, you just got to stay the course. You know you have a good product, and usually if you have more than 10 people, or at least 10 people that you don't know, that are complete strangers, that say, hey, I think you're onto something, you know, you have something, and just keep building towards that.
Yeah, like I and that's one thing when I have ideas too, like, and when I'm trying stuff out, I usually go to strangers that I don't know, because there's no emotional attachment to me, right? And they're going to give me real feedback. And if a stranger, it's a good chance that it, you know, it's a good indication. It's not always, but it's a good indication you're working on something that's good.
Right. I think, you know, that there's something to be said. Like, I didn't really think I had a potential, you know, successful company until strangers told me that. When strangers were like, hey, I think this is going to be huge, that's when you know you might be onto something. And outside of that, I would say if you have a tough friend, like, you know, I would consider you to be a tough friend that's going to be honest with you, that's going to be blunt. You know, those are the people you want to go to, because, you know, they're not going to sugarcoat it and make you think that your idea is so wonderful. They're going to tell you like, no, this is horrible. You know, but if your friends can look through the dust, and again, you're launching a product before, as a minority, you have no choice but to launch a product before you know that it's ready. So there's going to be issues, there's going to be bugs, and probably more than what would happen if you actually have the necessary resources to launch a product. But if people are able to see past those bugs and those issues to the bigger vision and say, hey, if you get the resources you need, this will be great, you know, you're probably onto something. I think that's really what happened with Home Lending Pal, is that, you know, this past year has been rough, but people could see the vision of what we were trying to do and the passion about that, solving that problem, you know, and addressing that need. And that's kind of where you know, it kind of took off for us.
Right. So I got to go back to it. Like, how do you navigate the, you know, the VC world and dealing with, you know, this moving target or whatever, and also, I guess, being a Black tech co-founder, right? Like, how do you deal with those? Like, what are some things you've done to boost your, I guess, your success rate? But, you know, how do you actually navigate that world?
So one, it's tough, you know, even personally, you know, I was in Miami, I battled with depression, you know, I battled with, you know, imposter syndrome, not thinking I was good enough. So it's going to happen. And talk about rejection that happens within the VC world, it does. But the thing we don't talk about is the type of rejection. You know, as a minority, as a woman, the rejection isn't just your normal, hey, this isn't a good idea, that can't make me money. The rejection usually comes in personal formats, personal attacks to you directly. And in many cases, it's based on scenarios that have nothing to do with you. Um, so I guess to put that into perspective, I read an article today that talked about the lady that founded Theranos, that she was basically a fraud, but she raised like $800 million, and it came out that she was a fraud for it, and the company was a fraud. But yet, women founders are still being penalized because of what she did. That has nothing to do with me. I don't know.
Are you talking about Thanos?
Elizabeth Holmes is her name, and they're actually making a movie about her.
She did the blood testing. You talking about her?
Blood testing app. Yeah, it was the blood testing app that she said that it could, with a single drop of blood, it could identify any I think any issue or any issue that you had from a health standpoint, and it just didn't work. But I think there's personal attacks there, but I think the biggest thing is continuing to take shots, and we're going to have to take a lot. If another founder, if a white founder says it takes them 100, be prepared for it to take you 200-300 founders, or to pitches for you to actually get something. But more importantly, when you pitch, have your pitch solid, have the pitch deck look good. But more importantly, spend the money to have a fractional CFO come in and help you build your financial forecast and your pro forma. I've seen and heard so many different pitches, even for myself. The pitch went really well, but when you got to the numbers didn't make sense. And to be able to say, oh, well, I hired a fractional CFO, and the numbers still might not make sense, but they're well thought out to a point where I think that I can justify this, is really very important as a minority founder. And I think that's really where we miss it for the first part. And I think the second part is that I'm all for Black power, for Black empowerment, but if you want to be like a white founder and raise funds like a white founder, go to the ones that have done what you're trying to do and see if they'll mentor you. The two guys that showed me how to raise money pre-revenue, one of them raised $30 million and the other one raised $40 million. So I was willing to kind of put my pride and ego to the side and say, teach me your ways. And it really comes down to the ability to tell a story, not of where you are. I think we get so caught in telling where the product is. Here I have this many users, I have, this many, making this much revenue, etc. But in the early days, it's about telling the story, getting people to buy into that story of what you want to build, and that you are capable of building it. It was funny that when I actually closed my rounds, I never had any slides that were focused on the market. I mean, people knew that what I was doing was a big market, and I never had any slides that focused on my competitors, because I don't want you focused on my competitors. I'm doing something that's never been done before, so focus on me. You know what I mean? But when they ask about that stuff, I mean, that's not to say don't know that stuff. Like know it in the back of your mind.
That's more in the QA part anyway. You win.
Like, know it in the QA part. Like know your numbers, know everything in the QA part, but don't make that the. I hate when people come out, especially entrepreneurs, come out and say, oh well, I am trying to be the Airbnb of this. Like, nah, don't start with that. Wait for the Q&A to tell them that, but tell them who you are and you're trying to be you. You know what I mean? And I think that works a lot better, because in that sense, you're not getting them to think that there's something else out there that's already doing what you're doing.
Yeah. So do you think, and I got an answer for it, but I want to ask you first, how much of an impact do you actually, feel that George Floyd and Breonna Taylor had on you being able to raise money?
A lot. I think the market, I think, so data, again, I'm a big data person. It showed that last year, VCs were more inclined to take leads with minority and women founders, but yet they didn't invest in minority and women. The numbers stayed exactly the same. I think, and then people started calling them out about that. Like, hey, we don't need meetings. We don't need advice. We need capital. I think more so than anything, it didn't necessarily get me more. Like, even you look now, my investor isn't an institutional VC. My investor is more of a strategic investor. They're actually a bunch of lenders that have seen the market shift because of George Floyd, where people are more focused on equality and fair lending, and our solution is more valuable for that. So I think that had more of an impact than VCs saying, oh, well, we need to go give minority founders more money, because the VCs were the ones that were saying, oh, this isn't a good idea. You don't have product market fit. Even though we had, a bunch of users and a bunch of lenders that we had already signed up on our own. And plus we had, we have IBM, Experian, ListHub, like a bunch of like at least $5 billion companies that are in exclusive strategic partnerships with a company at that time. We have raised less than $1 million. You don't see that often, but yet we still weren't given credit for that as minority. I'm an African American, my co-founder's Latino. Institutional VCs didn't give us credit for that. So yeah. I say that I don't think that it really changed anything from a true VC perspective. I think we were fortunate enough that a group of lenders saw what we were trying to do. They understood the necessity of addressing fair lending because of the way the market is shifting, and we were the best solution out there for them, and we had a plan to do so.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't even know statistically it didn't really change. But I do like Ruben from Career Karma. It's another app built by some Black founders from New York that I think hit the unicorn status last year as well. They both came out of Y Combinator, so I felt like Y Combinator actually boosted their ability to raise money, because you get in the Y Combinator, that's better than getting into Harvard or whatever. And then there was another guy, I'm blanking on his name, Vernon actually. He built an app called Real Time, which is similar to Clubhouse. It was actually out before Clubhouse. I saw that he had also raised money. He's the actually probably the youngest Black founder I know to have raised money. Yeah, because he's like 24, 23. And it's funny because I met him 2 years ago when I was in the Bay, and he was telling me his idea. This is when I was doing Tech Trap House. And I think he was trying to get me to put Tech Trap House on his app. And I was like, I couldn't really follow his vision because we were using Eventbrite. And I'm like, well, I'm using Eventbrite to handle all my processing. Why would I use Real Time? But he's also a technical co-founder as well, right? So yeah.
No, it's
beautiful to see it. Yeah.
I know the guys that Michael, he's a young Black founder. I think he's 21, and he founded Perch Credit, which is the company that Jay-Z funded or invested into. And it's tough. The data. And again, I hate to keep going back to data, but
no, numbers don't lie. It just
don't lie.
The person who's looking at it tells a different story.
Right. So you can tell whatever story you want, but the numbers show that there's only been 94 African American females that have raised more than $1 million ever. That's not last year. That's ever.
Yeah.
Ever. So
and you also know will.i.am at the time, I think even now, he has most of the funding that has ever gone to African Americans or underrepresented communities. And it's like
so again, we don't need, we do, but so I don't want to come off the wrong way, but we don't just need more advisory services or investors to take meetings with us and to be advisors to us. We need investors to take meetings with us with the intention of actually investing. And that's been something that I've been very vocal about, because I feel like, as African Americans, it's like, hey, we got this money. Don't say anything else. Don't upset anyone. And I'm not trying to upset anyone, but I think, what better opportunity to raise awareness than to take someone that has done it, and I have a resume, so you can't argue my resume.
Right.
And then say that, hey, it still took me 4 years. It took me selling my Miami condo, my exotic cars to fund my own business. And that's not to say that I shouldn't have done that. That's just to say that with my resume, if I were white, I have had to do that. And the answer is no. I would not have had to sell everything, move to my mom's couch in Orlando, and pursue the dream. That's not, that wouldn't have had to happen, especially with the amount of traction that we had. That wouldn't have had to happen if I were of a different race.
Yeah. yeah, agreed. And
again, but I think that out of everything with George Floyd and everything, I'm not really a political person. Obviously, as people talk about that I did stuff with Obama, I actually did stuff with Republicans too. So, I'm not, there's no secret there that, I used to say red or blue, all I saw is green. I did stuff with Renee Elmers. We put her into Congress. You know what I mean? So um, the point that I make is that, I think with the last year, we saw just how divided the country truly was in many capacities. And I think that as an African American man, and having worked both as an entrepreneur and in corporate America, when I said that, this is happening, I feel like I'm being discriminated against. It was like, oh no, racism doesn't exist. It was kind of a passive aggressive concept. Like, oh no, that couldn't. There's no way that can still
Yeah.
happen.
It's just like you get caught doing something wrong. You're like, I don't even know that person.
Right. Like I don't even know that person. But now I think that, with last year, if nothing else, it shed a light on the fact that we still have a long way to go for equality in the country.
Right.
And now you're seeing that data is coming out saying that, that we definitely have a long way to go. And it's not just because, credit scores and stuff like that. Like there's more to it. And a lot of it starts with there's still a lot of human bias in a lot of the processes, and the system wasn't built. Like when you look at the numbers again, like a lot of you talk about that wealth gap. And of course it's highlighted on African Americans because we're the worst group out of everyone, especially when it comes to home ownership. But last year was the best year to buy homes. 84% of the people that bought homes were white. There was no minority ethnicity that was in double digits. Latinos were the next highest segment, and they were only at 7%. African Americans were at the bottom at 4%. But then you look at equality, when you truly talk about equality, same-sex couples were 73% more likely to get declined than heterosexual couples. Women right now pay higher mortgage rates, even though they're more qualified than their male counterparts in 49 states. 49 states. So you can't say
What's
that.
What's the one state? Alaska or something?
I forget. It might be Alaska. I'll have to, I really don't remember the one. I don't even know if it mentioned the one state. But it's just that you can't say that, we talk about, well, African Americans aren't qualified to buy homes, and it's because they're credit, which may be a true statement. But why is it that the one thing that you say unqualifies us the most is the one data point? So HMDA data is known as the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, which basically says that the lender has to collect your age, sex, race, etc., to make a mortgage, which sounds counterintuitive to the fact that HMDA was originally intended to decrease biases and discrimination in 1975 when it was created. So you're looking at this and you're saying that this is supposed to help, but then the reason that we say that, the discrepancy is so big, that there's such a big gap in home ownership, is because African Americans don't have the proper credit scores. We got credit scores is the one data point that publicly you are not required to submit to show for HMDA data. So now we're using a field that we don't have a way to prove or disprove that theory is correct or inaccurate. We just have to go on your word that it is. So our argument is that, let's make it a little bit more transparent, not just only for African Americans, but for everyone, so that, let's play spades with the cards up, all trust.
Right. And that was actually what I was going to ask you, because that 84% stat you told me the other day, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. And I think it's a perfect segue into the home lending pal. How do you combat that problem, or how do you make it easier for the average person to buy a home and to quote unquote live that American dream house with the picket fence and stuff?
So you look at data empowerment, which is basically that you control your data, and then data democratization, which is you can make a decision without needing an expert to tell you what to do. So in essence, what we're doing is we're collecting the underwriting data that is necessary from a lender, their guidelines, and the underwriting information that is necessary from you as a borrower, your financial, your credit score, et cetera. Then of course, documents you upload with your taxes and everything. And we are hiding your age, sex, and race, and just allowing the lender, creating this double-blind financial review scenario where I'm able to review your finances without you disclosing that information. And that in itself should give you a better chance of becoming the homeowner. Because if I look good on paper, once I disclose who I am, you can't say, oh, well, no, my bad, we messed up on that. No, you're not qualified. Because if that starts happening, we'll have, with the whole purpose of blockchain is that it's an immutable ledger. We'll see that it's happening, but we'll have an audit trail that shows that that's happening. And right. That's something that we need to address. Or maybe it is true. Maybe we don't have the credit score, but we'll have an audit trail that shows that that is the case. and then a way to understand how to fix that or address that problem. But more importantly, it's happening without putting the borrower into a position where they're forced to buy. If you think about it now, a home is the biggest purchase that you'll ever make, but yet everyone in the process is incentivized to sell. And that's not to say they're good or bad people because they're incentivized to sell. That just means that it doesn't benefit the borrower when I can't get information that is just solely that's personalized without me having to actually submit an application when I know I'm not ready. So you have to make it where people feel comfortable getting into the process without feeling like they're forced to interact with the human. So that's our biggest thing is that, human interaction isn't required from day one. When you're ready, when you feel like you're ready, our system will show you that, and then you can select which lenders you feel like you have the best opportunity to move forward with.
Yeah. And that's the thing I like too about your ideas, that you're following the trend of so I'm in sales, and a lot of the products that I've sold, I'm dealing with a more educated potential customer or prospective customer, right? They're doing their own research. They're just talking to the rep to see if they can get a deal or whatnot, right? So I definitely love how your idea falls in that same vein, because doesn't it do, I think it's people start preparing to buy a house, 6 months before they do it, or a year or something like that?
It's usually serious people are usually 6 months out when they start looking at their stuff, but people typically start thinking I want to become a homeowner 2 years out typically. And the beauty of our platform is that if you're ready to buy now, the focus is on reducing the friction again, making it where you can go through the underwriting process with hopefully as little friction as possible.
Yeah.
But, if you're unqualified, where that there's stuff that you need to work on, our system, our artificial intelligence isn't making a lending decision. It is identifying that information and giving you a personalized roadmap where you can interact with it so that you can become ready. And our ultimate goal is to have it to be something like, I'm a big Iron Man fan. So like Jarvis or even, something simpler like Siri or Alexa, where you're able to interact. And that's why I called it Home Lending Pal, because, with your pal is like a friend, it's someone that you feel like, hey, I can tell you this in confidence and not be embarrassed. Most people are so embarrassed to think that, hey, I can go buy this $500,000 home. You go through the process and hey, you barely qualify for a $250,000 home. That's embarrassing, especially considering that most people are referred to friends of the family or if your dad or your brother went or any family member was able to successfully get a home, they're like, hey, I got somebody that will work with you. And now you're working with that person. That person thinks so highly of you that, oh yeah, this person, Brian's going to be good. Brian can go afford a $1 million, $2 million house because he's raised finance, because he's raised money. But the thing they don't know is that, Brian went and put so much money into his company that, his debt to income ratio isn't where it needs to be, or his credit score isn't where it needs to be. So Brian can't afford a $2 million house. All Brian can afford is a $400,000 house or a $200,000 house. And for many people, that is embarrassing. And, so we're trying to avoid that scenario while also showing more about the hidden costs that go along with being a homeowner.
Got it. So what are some areas of credit that you feel people should know about? What are the important areas about it? I know like debt to income ratio, but what are some like other things to always consider?
Well, let's go above debt to income ratio. Our system does give you all those areas, and I will talk about those. But most people, like when you go to others, so we are the only non-loan originating company in the country that is providing FICO scores in this scenario to consumers for free without originating a loan product. And that came from a strategic part. It took me 4 years to do that, to negotiate that, because FICO didn't actually allow their scores to be shown directly to consumers before that. But most people don't even realize that when I'm pulling, you hear about these horror stories about, hey, I've been following my credit score, and then I go pull an actual application and I'm 80 points lower than what Credit Karma or anyone else showed you. Yep. That isn't to say that Credit Karma is wrong. What happens is that all the internet sites, because FICO wasn't allowing anyone else to do this direct to consumer thing, you're looking at a Vantage score, and lenders actually utilize FICO scores. So that's the first part, is understanding what lenders are using and making it where, again, data democratization, where I see what you see, and now I know what you're working off of. Most people base their assumptions off of a Vantage score, which isn't even utilized. And that's where that first kind of misstep or gap happens. The second part of that is of course, debt to income ratio, really understanding that. keeping that debt to income ratio. Typically you want to be under 30%. But when it comes to credit utilization, it's okay to have credit. In our community, we're taught that credit is a bad thing. That's not the case. Credit builds wealth, and that's one of the best ways to get wealth when used appropriately. But to get there, you have to understand that on a monthly basis, try to keep your credit utilization to under 10%, and then utilize that in a way that will help you grow. So I think those are there. Of course, there's a lot more, but those are really kind of two big factors. And as you create an account, we're getting ready to repush the second version of our platform with Experian. If you're unsure, if you log on and you connect, you do have to connect your bank account, but we don't actually have any access to do any transactions. It's just literally to analyze your last 2 years of transactions like a lender would.
Right.
The soft FICO pool. But once you do that, we will give you personalized videos that will literally explain your own credit and point out the different areas of impact that are really important to you. So with that, and I'll say the third, then I'll shut up, is the history of credit. We get to a point where, hey, I paid off this credit card, I'm going to turn it off. No, pay off the credit card and leave it active, but just don't use it. Turning it off actually hurts you.
Just put your Netflix bill on it.
Yeah, just keep it going and something small and utilize it. But people don't realize that turning off credit hurts you more than it helps you, because now you're losing lines of credit and your credit history is shrinking. And credit history is a very big factor when it comes to determining what your credit score will be. So
yeah.
But our system will give you videos that'll teach you that, so you don't have to listen to someone like me talk. It'll be in a private context and they're short. They're like a minute or two where it talks about these things and helps you understand how to leverage credit. I remember meeting an Indian guy. His name was Rajiv. He was really cool for me. He was a senior consultant when I was at Marketo, and he told me about utilizing credit cards to a point where if you like to travel, and most of us do like to travel, get a credit card that has points. And as you use one of these points, let pay all your bills, everything you do with the credit card, then pay the credit card off before the due date, usually 8 days before the due date is set. And then when it comes to traveling, because you're spending so much on the credit card, you're earning twice the points than you would like an airline card or anything like that. So now when it's time for you to take trips and stuff, you literally have enough points to pay for your flight, for your hotels, etc. Man, I think I went like 2-3 years without ever buying a flight because I had enough credit card points where I just used my credit card points for everything I did travel wise. So
yeah, like I spent the last year just really building up my financial literacy, and I was just kind of like blown away seeing it how people actually built their wealth. Like I think I talked to you about this, like I'm just building up my net worth and stuff and waiting for the next recession to happen, right? Obviously recessions happen in normal business cycles, but what a lot of people do, or what I read, is that they pull all their credit lines, right, and then they dump it into the market when it bottoms out, and then within a year they're able to pay off that debt, and maybe they got like at least like a $5 to $10 risk reward ratio on the money they loaned out or whatever. So it's really powerful what you can do. Like even people pulling out. I was watching an interview on Earn Your Leisure, and this one guy talked about how he pulled out the home equity. He put out his ELOC, home equity value of his home, and put that into the stock market. And he was saying how he I think he got a 10x return, and this was like less than like 8 months. Especially if you bought options and stuff. And yeah, so it's like, it's a game changer, man.
I don't, people talk about making it. And I don't think having money to buy whatever you want means you make it. I think you really haven't made it until you're getting things that you want for free. That's really and it's a very different type of making it, where, you want to go to, an NBA game and sit courtside, and someone, gives you those tickets and stuff like that. Like, that's when you made it. Or you're able to get, something that's very exclusive, very expensive for a very deep discount.
Right.
That's when you've made it. Being able to go out and buy a pair of $1,000 shoes, don't get me wrong, it's cool. But, that's not necessarily making it in a way that, builds wealth. A lot of the wealthiest people I've been around, they get a lot of stuff for free, but they also do a lot as well. So it's not just, you're not just freeloading off of people. you have value. People see so much value in what you're doing or who you are or being associated with you, that they're willing to give, because they know that what they will get in return, the value that they get in return, is exponential. And at that
Right.
point, we're able to do that. You've made it. So one of the things I tell a lot of entrepreneurs that I mentor, or when I go talk to younger kids and stuff, is that if you really want to be wealthy or successful, focus on the value that you bring. Don't focus on how much money you make or anything like that. Focus on the value that you bring, because money comes and goes. I've been very well off. I've been very poor too. I've been broke, before. But the one thing that never changed is the value that I was
stay trapping though. That's one thing that don't change.
Stay trapping, and the value that you bring doesn't you can't change. If you're good at something, that never changes. That skill set never goes away. So have one thing that that you can bring a lot of value, so that whether you're doing it for yourself or for someone else, you can put food in your mouth eventually.
Right. Yeah. And you kind of remind me of a book I read a few years ago called Being a Go Giver Instead of a Go Getter. Where it's the idea of, you're giving, right? You're adding value to a community or what have you, right? And you make yourself almost immovable, because everybody needs you around, needs you to be around to be successful, right? Because they're coming to you for one thing they can depend on.
Hey, look, man, don't front for your audience. I feel like I made you read that book. No, but no,
you might have.
The book is called The Go Giver, and
because it's a red book, yeah. And did Russell Simmons write it, or I think Russell Simmons mentioned that book too.
Russell Simmons wrote it, but I know the book title is called Go Giver, and it's like it's a completely different mindset that you're giving, but you're giving of value is so good that you'll get exponentially because of that.
Right.
And, that's the whole concept of it. So yeah, if you haven't read it, it's definitely a good book. It talks about how a lot of people become super successful from that.
Yeah.
Especially in a business context.
Yeah. Cool, man. Trying to think what else I was gonna ask you.
What else?
I don't know. You got a question for me, man? I've been asking all the questions.
Well, you're supposed to.
Such an asshole.
No, I mean, I don't have any right now, but baby's kids are getting ready to come in, so that's probably why. So I'm trying to make sure we get everything.
Yeah. Well, I guess I do got some more questions for you. So, what's the long-term vision for Home Lending Pal? Where do you see the company at in 5 years?
Oh, I'm not shy at all of saying that I want to be the first African American man to build a fintech unicorn. I want to do 100 million in annual revenue, but I also want to help 1 million people get into homes, especially if that's 1 million African American people. That's even better. So I am not shy about that at all. I'm
I love it. Yeah,
it is what it is. But I think that when it comes to acquisitions or mergers, it will definitely have to be something that I feel benefits the people. I think that's the one thing that makes us unique, is that we've done this with people in mind. I mean, we're benefiting lenders, but I definitely think that this is something that people need. Again, it doesn't make sense that a home is the biggest purchase that you'll ever make, but yet it's the one purchase that you can't go easily do research. I mean, think about it. If you want to go buy a car, you can easily research everything you want to know about that car.
Right.
This is all the costs that are associated with that car before you jump into it. TV, pretty much anything else. But a home, it's like you can get so far, and it's like, oh, well, for you to know the rest of that, you have to actually submit an application. And it's just like, but why?
Get it inspected.
Right. Like, why would I submit an application if I know that I'm not ready or I'm not qualified yet? Like, that's counterintuitive. And in many cases, it actually hurts you because they're doing a hard credit pull. It hurts you because, that mark shows on your credit report. Whereas, in this scenario, what we're doing is we're making it where you can see all that, but there's no negative impact. So, but yeah, I would love to, be a unicorn. I want, a 1 million users, even better if it's 1 million active users where people are constantly logging on. And, we want, they say that right now, the average millennial spends about 6 hours conducting research before they go buying a house. So my goal from a usage standpoint is either to take up as much of that 6 hours as I can, or to reduce that 6 hours to a point where they're so qualified to the point where they're ready to go. Because it's crazy. You're spending 6 hours online researching, but yet I think the most recent study by CNBC showed that 68% of millennials regret buying their first home because they still didn't understand everything that was involved with the cost. So that means that you're spending 6 hours and you still don't have enough of the information personalized to a point where you feel comfortable. So I think if we're able to solve that problem, that puts us in a really great place, and the rest is just
history. Yeah.
history.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, right? Where you learn a skill, now it start out taking you 40 hours and now you can do it in 10 hours.
Exactly. Like, that is definitely the case. And again, it's about, whether you're building a product for you, building a product for a company, is providing value. You don't, at least with us, you rarely hear us talking about money. I know I mentioned like the revenue goal of 100 million in annual ARR, but an annual ARR just means annual revenue for anyone that
right
familiar with those type of terms. But I more want that just because that is a number that it has been said that minority founders aren't capable of doing. They aren't capable of achieving that. And it's funny because the guy that built Calendly, he had a lot of revenue coming in and still struggled to raise funds. So,
yep.
For me, it's not just about myself. It's also about changing the game for others behind me as well, which is why, again, that I am so vocal to the point, hopefully it's not detrimental to my own personal success. But again, I think that I've been given a little platform to speak and to have the gift of gab, if you will. So why not use it to not only benefit myself, but to also benefit others that look like me? And,
right.
I think it's unfortunate that, well, it's not unfortunate. You look at our community and even myself, growing up, success for us, and I challenge anyone to tell me 5 successful, like, millionaires that that are Black that aren't in entertainment. And most people struggle with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can't. Yeah, yeah.
You're right. You struggle with it. So my goal is to hopefully get to a point where, you can see Black excellence. And when I say entertainment, I mean athletes, movie stars, rappers, singers, they're all entertainers. You struggle, like, the one of the biggest guys, actually the biggest Black billionaire, is a guy by the name of Robert Smith. And he's a hedge fund.
Heard of him.
He's a hedge fund. And people only really knew who he was because when the African American Museum up in DC was built, he actually was the guy that came in and donated more than Oprah. And people were like, yo, who is this guy? I
didn't know that.
And so that's why people knew, because before that. But again, you have this multi-billionaire that even himself for years was under the radar because, again, you don't want to outshine the master. And for him, it was just like, I'm Black, but and I have a lot of money, but it's still not, like, he talked about his struggles as even with being a billionaire, that he still wasn't good enough. You know what I mean? And so for years, it was just like, don't show anyone who you are. Like, they don't need to see my face. And I think that, now we're getting to a point where our future depends on kids seeing the face and seeing that, hey, I may not be the next LeBron James, but I told one guy, why not teach our kids not only just to want to be LeBron James? There's nothing wrong with that. But what about teaching our kids to want to be the guy that pays LeBron James? Like, what if I want to be Dan Gilbert? That is so cool, and it starts with us in having our kids believe that that's possible. So,
Robert Smith gave he paid off his alma maters that it was HBCU, the senior. He paid off their debt. Yeah,
I don't even know if it was his alma mater. I just think, like, that year he donated like $50 million. He donated like $22 million to the National, the Historic Black Museum. Then he went and paid like $35 million worth of debt to a random HBCU. And it really, I don't even know if it was his alma mater. I think he just did it just because. But it's just, imagine that, like, how blessed those kids are, because he literally wiped out all their debt. And for him, it was just 35 million, whatever.
35 cents.
And
I'm all about $1. What's 50 cents?
Right. And I study him a lot. I think you have to study the people you want to be like. And he talks about one time that he lives in Texas, in Austin, actually. And I only know this because the building that he was working out of was actually when I went and worked for private equity. My private equity group worked out of the same building. And he was, in one of his interviews and his stories, he talked about the fact that he was driving his car. I think it probably was an exotic car, but he was driving the car and he was going to the airport. He got pulled over. And the cop was like, where are you going? He's like, oh, I'm going to the airport. And the cop was like, oh, well, what time does your plane leave? And I think he jokingly said like, oh, well, whenever I get there, because I own the jet. And the cop didn't believe him. So,
Wow.
it was just, stuff like that. That's, for guys like us, that was really, that stuck out to me because like, that's the most asshole thing you can say, but what can I say after that? So,
Yeah.
but it still shows that, even with all that money, you're still just, a regular black guy. So.
That's
Kanye
crazy.
said
Yeah.
it in a different way, but I'm not going to say it the way Kanye said it.
Yeah. So how do you actually have like a work-life balance? Some people are on the side of like, I don't agree with work-life balance, just follow your passion. Some people are like, I'm more of the mindset of like having like a work-life balance. But what does that actually look like for you?
If you had told me that, years ago when we first started working, I remember you and I used to grind late nights, early mornings, all the time. But the fact of the matter is there's 168 hours in the week. That is literally all I did is took 24 and multiplied it by 7. The average, I wish it was complicated than that, but that's all I did.
Yeah.
The average person needs, even if you're sleeping about 8 hours a day, just say you're sleeping, you need 8 hours. You say that I want 8 hours of sleep every day. That's 35 hours. So, 8 times 7 is 56.
7.
So you're still at like what, 168 minus 56. So you're still at like 112 hours. So you still, even if you're getting a full 8 hours of sleep every night, you still have 112 hours in the week. Let's say that you're just a super grinder and you're working 60, 80 hours a week. We'll just say 80. You still have 32 hours left in the week. So when I was working with, Andy Triva from ESW Capital, the thing that he made me realize is that it's not that you don't have enough time or you're too busy. It's that most people have problems with time management. That's really where the problem is. Because there's technically, we just did the math. Technically, there is no way that you can't get everything you need to do. Even if you're grinding 80 hours a week, you still have 32 hours left over to do work. The problem is that people are so distracted with other stuff, with social media and everything else, that you're not as focused and not as fixed on things that you need to get do. So then therefore, people, I'll just do it tomorrow, and it gets pushed off, or, and that's not to say that you can't be busy, but I say that to say that, one, you allocate time to what's important to you. And a very successful guy told me one time, a big CEO of a big company told me that if family is important for you, you schedule meetings on your calendar, you schedule your lunches. If you need to, schedule your family time as well. And that's literally what I do now. I schedule family time.
Yeah.
And treat that family time the same way that you would treat a meeting or anything else on your calendar. Like, this is my family time. I'm going to do that. And again, there's 168 hours in the week. So you should be able to allocate some time to family. You just have to prioritize that. And it's hard. I mean, I get it. I'm in the same boat. It's hard.
Yeah.
But, again, mathematically, and this is why I'm a data guy. Mathematically, there is no such thing as I don't have enough time. It is I am not focused. My time management skills need to be better than what they currently are.
Time management.
Hard truths, man. You have to look at hard truths. And again, I am probably as busy as they come right now. It is 8:43 on a Thursday, and I'm doing an interview with you. You know what I mean? So I get it. You know what I mean?
And thank you. Yeah. And definitely thank you. Yeah.
Oh, no, it's all love, bro. It's all love. But again, it's just it's time management, and it's also having a family that understands us, a family, a spouse that understands that you have to put the time in, you have to grind, because whenever you're chasing one thing, there's another thing that's getting away.
Right.
Whether that's significant others, whether that's love, whatever's important to you, there's always something else getting in the way.
Right.
But you have to figure out kind of what makes the most sense for you, what's really important to you, and really focus on that and put effort. I think that's the biggest part of it, trying to put the effort in. And you're not going to be perfect. We're human, so it's not going to be perfect, but you have to try to find that balance.
Yeah. And the time management, I feel like you hit it on the head. Like, I haven't heard nobody describe it like that, but like, I'm working full time, and I'm doing, trap. You got a project called Trap View I'm working on, and doing this podcast, right? So it's like I plan a lot of what I have to do around, wanting to spend time, with my lady and family, and then work comes next because that's paying the bills, right? And that's how I'm building my good credit.
Yeah.
And then, and plus, I work at a Black Unicorn, first time ever, and it's just like a way different experience, right? And then I plan everything else around those main priorities, right? So like even me and you will have conversations, and I actually spend a lot of time on, well, actually now I don't spend as much time, but it's like now I've developed a system for it, with managing, my investments, right? So I don't have to look at my investments every day, right? I just look at them, maybe 4 hours a week, right? Because I have it pretty much automated, right? So it's like you find ways to carve out extra time by creating these systems and setting up alerts and stuff. And right, and with my podcast, I can actually record these interviews, when I have time. You know what I'm saying? I can post it when I actually have time, versus, if I had to go into an office, which is why I love remote work, right? Because I can literally, prioritize my life over my work. So,
it's funny, and it's probably a little crazy at the same time, but my time management stuff even comes down to something as simple as where I eat. So say I want McDonald's, or my nephew wants McDonald's when he's riding with me in the car.
yeah.
I literally, if there's a McDonald's that I have to make a U-turn with, but then there's also a McDonald's 2 miles down the road that's on the same side, that's in the same direction that I'm going, I will literally drive that 2 miles to where I'm going before I get to McDonald's instead of making that U-turn. Because people don't realize that U-turn is even, again, when you go back to time management, another time sink. And I actually just had one of the girls that I mentor, she started doing this, and she's like, oh, I'm so much more productive, because she realized that when she was running errands, instead of trying to get everything on a single path and doing everything that was, say, on the right side of the street, then making that U-turn and coming back, she was going to this side and making a U-turn, going back there. And she realized that, before she knew it, she was spending an hour and a half, 2 hours in her car just driving. I was like, like, Ash, imagine if you were going to one side of town, you did everything that you had to do on that side of town first, and you came back to the other side of town, you finished everything you had to do, how much more productive you would do. And even something as simple as that, I literally just got off a call with her this past Tuesday, and she was like, I am so much, like, it's been so much better. And I think a lot of people just don't think of it like that. But once you get that in your mindset, you ingrain that into your mindset, you'll be surprised how much of your time.
Right. But I think I can't give you credit for that, man. I think you stole that from UPS, because UPS actually does that. They realized if they changed their route to where it was all left turns or something like that, they were able to use less gas. So yeah, I think you stole that from them, bro.
Well, I mean, that's fine. I mean, sometimes feeling is repurposing, so they say that there's no such thing as a new good idea. There's always someone else has always had it. You just refine it to make it better. So thank you for that. But I just thought I was trying to save gas and be efficient. So
yeah. Got two more questions. So where do you see the mortgage and the credit industry in the future? How do you see it changing?
I think both are going to get to a point. So you're seeing now that, from a mortgage perspective, they're looking at alternative, or even credit. Alternative credit is going to become a big thing. Right now, you have about 3.1 million thin file millennials that are technically qualified, but they don't have enough credit history, enough credit data to make significant purchases. So, how do you address those users when they're not? Our outlook on debt and credit is not the same as our parents was. For parents, everything was about credit. For us, you're seeing outside of student loans, and probably because of student loans, a lot of millennials, and especially Generation Z now too, is trying to avoid credit debt altogether.
Yeah.
So you have to look at ways outside of that to still allow them to build their credit history. So I think you're going to see a lot more alternative credit options. And when I say alternative credits, things like utilizing your utility bill, your rent. There's even some that will be able to utilize like Netflix payments, stuff like that, as a
Experian is that Experian boost. Yeah,
exactly, to be able to show that you do have credit history. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that, both in the mortgage space and the credit space in general, because again, you're dealing with a generation that does not look get credit the same as our older generation, the baby boomers did.
Right. Yeah. And I use an app. I've been using an app called, I think it's called Kickoff, where it's really a savings account, but they make positive hits on my credit report, and I'm building credit like that. So that's basically alternative credit, right? That's like an example of it. Yeah.
There's a lot of apps that are coming out like that, but I think we'll see that. And again, I think also you're seeing the rise of neobanks, where millennials are moving away from your traditional banking options and going towards your neobanks. And so, payment platforms like Square, Chime, Cash App, people aren't even creating bank accounts, or just utilizing those as their bank accounts. So
you could have got your PPE check through Square, I believe. Your PPE check. Yeah.
Exactly. So how do you think about addressing those markets, those unserved markets? Is definitely going to be well, I know it's already at the top of a lot of executives' minds. So
and I know a lot of people in crypto who try to use their assets to buy houses, and that's been also hard too. And I think it largely is just because of the volatility in Bitcoin. 1 minute, it's up crazy, and the next minute it drops 80%.
I think that's why I've been very adamant about blockchain, because I think one part that we don't talk about as much is the data empowerment aspect, where more consumers are going to be willing to want to control their own data, and who has access to that data. Like, so right now, if you put in a credit application and you're not qualified, that lender can basically take that information and put it to whoever they want to on the secondary market, and allow them to do as many hard credit pulls as they want. And you typically see that, especially when you try to buy a car. Like, you'll see that the credit score has been hit 7 times because they're trying to get you underwritten. Whereas with products like blockchain, it gives the consumer greater control over who can initiate that hard credit pull, and even more importantly, who has your access to your data, what they're doing with that data. And I think that you're going to see more borrowers that want to see that want to know that. It's oftentimes, you have a mortgage and your mortgage gets sold to someone, and you don't even know that it's been sold. So I think we're going to see conditions like that, where consumers are going, and that's really why I believe in blockchain, or the use of blockchain in the financial capacity is again around the transparency that it creates for the consumer, more so than everything else is really our focus there.
And like decentralized finance is taking off, and for people who don't know what decentralized finance is, it's basically the idea of going through a set of people who are using a particular blockchain like Bitcoin to actually get a loan, versus going through a central entity like a bank or whatever to get approved for a loan. And I can definitely see how, as that explodes more and more, like even Coinbase is changing their strategy to be more focused on decentralized finance. So I can definitely see, and I actually saw that they said that most of your new millionaires and even billionaires are going to come from crypto within the next like 10 years, right? And so how are they going to be able to buy these high value stuff, right? Well, they're going to want to use their crypto as credit, which is like one of my strategies too. Like, I want to get a bunch of crypto and just literally just live off the credit, like how a lot of wealthy people do, and not even have to sell my asset, right? Just keep it, hold it, and then probably live off 5%, get a loan against 5 or 10% or something like that, right? So
no, for sure. I think we're in the wild west right now, but I think the world is changing quickly.
Right. Then my last question before we go, thankfully your mom was able to beat cancer and stuff. And for people who've actually dealt with a relative who've had cancer, I had my grandmother pass from like ovarian cancer when I was like 10 years old. So how do you support a person when they're a loved one when they're going through such a struggle? What are some things that you were doing to support your mother even throughout your career? Because this is back when you actually had the marketing agency, right? Like she had it back then, right?
Yeah, my mom was doing chemo every other weekend. It didn't matter where I was in the country. I would stop what I was doing and fly back to sit by her side. And I think in 2 years, I probably only missed maybe 3 or 4 treatments. And many times my friends stepped in.
Now it makes sense why you made sure to fly free.
Right. Why I fly, I paid for everything else so that way I could fly back free. But I think the biggest thing is, a lot of the people that she was doing treatment with didn't make it. And usually the mind goes before the body. And so I think the biggest thing for someone.
Yeah, I've heard it. They call it chemo brain, right?
Yeah, where the mind checks out and the body checks out. So I think the biggest thing is just being for them there physically and mentally, but then also in the mental capacity, keeping it positive, not letting them, even when you hear bad news, finding a way to make them laugh, a way to make them smile, because again, if that mind goes, the body is quick to follow, and we saw a lot of them that they just gave up. They gave up mentally before the body gave up physically.
Mm, mm. Wow.
So
Well, cool, man. Luckily, your nephew won't that loud. A little bit, pop some pans. He must have said he was hungry or something.
I went on mute. He's about to come over here and mess things up, man. But no, I appreciate you for having me, brother. This was fun.
Yeah.
We probably went too long.
No, we ain't go too long. It's just right, just right. I got to start packing for my trip to Atlanta. I'm going to Invest Fest or whatever. So I got an audacious goal there. So like, I just trying to find the data around like how long does it take a YouTuber or a podcaster to actually get to 1 million views, right? And I'm like, how many? So then I just made up some numbers. I was like, you know what? I need to do 100 interviews, right? I do 100 interviews. Each interview, I cut it up, or I'm able to get 10 pieces of content, the full interview, and then 10 pieces of it. It gives me 1,000 videos, and I'm like, okay, I should get 1,000 views per clip, right? And then I was like, well, if that's the baseline, well, how about I push for 200 interviews, to make it more guaranteed, and that's like 500 views per video, right? 2,000 times
gotta love
500.
Those overachievers, man. But I love it, man. I love it.
So yeah. So I'm like, let me go to Invest Fest and rack up 50 interviews. I got to make sure I make the trip worth it, because I'm like, all right, that comes out to be about $50. How much should I spend on everything, like the ticket and the trip? I guess it'd come out to be about $20 per interview. And I'm like, let me drop the cost of going to the conference, So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I got some stuff cooking, but yeah, bro, thanks for joining me. Thanks for coming through to the trap.
Thanks for having me in the trap, man. I appreciate it. I'm proud of you. I support you, and I love you, bro. Keep grinding.
Appreciate it, man. Love you too, man. Love you too. And this definitely won't be the last, man. I definitely want to make sure you're sharing your journey, right? And we're seeing your evolution, right? So I don't know, I might be hitting you up every time you do a new round. I'm like, bro, what you learn?
Like what I learned.
Like, yeah. Like my CEO, we raised 250 million, and I think that brought them to unicorn status. And he was just like, the VC called us, and because I guess at that level, VCs interact with him a lot, but a lot of times they're just BS, and they're not really, they're not really trying to raise. They're just trying to, I don't know, shake trees, I guess you say.
They're trying to scout, they're trying to keep their pipeline going. They're trying to see what you got going on versus portfolio companies. So,
right.
A lot of founders, don't feel bad for a lot of VCs, they're shaking trees. They're trying to see what you got going, trying to see how it looks for their portfolio companies. Typically, if you're not meeting with a managing director or an LP, then it's probably nothing to get excited about. Usually people under that, the associates and stuff, are really just there to disqualify you and find a reason not to invest. So I learned that the hard way.
Well, thanks for letting me know, because anytime an associate hits me up, I'm like, no.
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes to time. There's nothing wrong with it if it's someone you really a VC that you really want to work with.
Right.
Nothing wrong with taking that, but again, don't get overly.
It's all about leverage too, though. I think it's leverage too.
Yeah, like you have to learn how to leverage yourself and how to show that I have options. You have to figure out a way for yourself to create FOMO, and that's fear of missing out for the VCs for people that don't know. But the better you can create that fear of missing out through press, through product releases, etc., the more likely you are to have the VCs hit you up. And it gets to a point where, like, now we are at a point where managing directors usually hit either myself up, or they'll hit our pre-series A lead up and talk to them about the investment. So that's really what you want. And that is kind of when you're at that point, you're a little bit closer to getting a deal done. I won't say that you're going to get that deal done, but it's a little bit closer to getting a deal done.
Right. I mean, and people love giving money to people who look like they don't need their money.
Yeah, I mean, the I mean, again, you kind of want to fake it till you make it, but don't hurt yourself doing it. But
Right,
it's
right.
funny. My current lead joked the other day that when they called me originally, I told them that I already had my lead, that I didn't really need their money, but I was going to take their meeting just because they were interesting to me, because they were a network of lenders, and they ended up being the ones that I actually ended up leaving. I won't say leaving. We decided not to take the term sheet from the original lead investor to go with them because they provided greater strategic value. And so, but again, to your point, people want to invest into someone that doesn't need the money. The money is great, but we didn't need the money. At that time, I
Right.
had closed the round. I had just raised about $900,000. And so I didn't really need the money. I wasn't even in fundraising mode at the time. But that's when you're most likely to get your big, opportunities, because you don't need the funds, and that makes them want to, especially if you have a lot of momentum. But we did have a lot of momentum as a company, but we didn't need their funds. So that really helped a lot.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I'm gonna let you go. It's been real.
Appreciate you, Brody.
We signing out. I want to thank y'all for joining us. And, taking the time out of your day to listen to us talk, trap talks and stuff. So hit that subscribe button. Go follow Home Lending Pal. You trying to buy a home, sign up. If you want to get better educated on building your credit, check them out. Yeah, man, this guy's a star. I'm surprised more people don't know him. But hey, man, thank y'all for joining the trap. I'm over and out.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, you had to throw the piece, huh?
I did. No gang sign.